This is where the monad comes in. Not a god, not a belief, not a myth. It's the original awareness, the source behind every thought, every observer, every moment of knowing. And here's the part most people don't realize. The monad doesn't connect with everyone. It only reaches certain souls. The ones who feel out of place, even when everything looks fine. The ones who sense meaning in silence. The ones who feel tired of pretending, tired of chasing, tired of being someone they were never meant to be. When the monad reaches you, life doesn't explode, it quiets. Desires fall away. Old identities feel heavy. You start watching the world instead of being pulled by it. And that can feel lonely, confusing, even unsettling. But it's also the beginning of something real. If you've ever felt like you're waiting for something you can't name, if you've ever looked at your life and thought, there has to be more than this. If you've ever felt awake in a world that seems asleep, then stay with me. Because this video isn't meant to convince you of anything. It's meant to remind you of something you already know. And if this message resonates, leave a comment. You're not as alone as you think. Like this video so it finds who it's meant to find. Share it only if it feels right. And subscribe, because once the monad reaches you, the journey has already begun. Orange Heart. The monad isn't something you learn about the way you learn history or science. It isn't an idea you pick up from a book and add to your belief system. It's closer to something you remember, even though you can't point to a moment when you were taught. When people try to explain it, words always feel slightly wrong, but we use them anyway because silence doesn't translate well on a screen. The simplest way to approach it is this. Before thoughts, before emotions, before identity, there is awareness. Not awareness of something, but awareness itself. The monad is that first awareness, the quiet presence that exists before the mind decides what anything means. It's important to clear something up early because a lot of modern spirituality has blurred the lines. The monad isn't an angel watching over you. It's not a guide whispering instructions. It's not the universe sending signs because you believed hard enough. It doesn't belong to any religion, and it doesn't ask for faith. In fact, belief is almost beside the point. You don't believe in the monad the way you believe in a story. You recognize it the way you recognize yourself in a mirror, instantly and without effort. That recognition doesn't arrive as a voice in your head telling you something dramatic. It arrives as a shift, subtle but undeniable, like suddenly realizing you've been dreaming and you're awake inside the dream. People often expect spiritual experiences to be loud or emotional, like fireworks going off in the soul. The monad doesn't work that way. It's more like a signal than a message. There's no instruction manual, no command, no promise of reward. It's a moment where the observer notices itself. The part of you that's been watching your thoughts suddenly becomes visible. It's not exciting in the way a thrill is exciting, but it's deeply grounding, like finally standing on solid ground after not realizing you were drifting. Imagine remembering something you never learned. That's the closest metaphor most people can relate to. There's no sense of discovery because discovery implies something new. Instead, there's a strange familiarity like, of course, this was always here. That's why the monad doesn't choose people the way we usually think of being chosen. There's no selection process, no hierarchy. It resonates. When the inner conditions are right, recognition happens naturally, the way a tuning fork responds to the right frequency. Nothing is forced. Nothing is imposed. This is also why so many people never feel it, and that's not a failure or a flaw. Modern life is designed to keep attention moving outward. From the moment most people wake up, their awareness is pulled into schedules, notifications, responsibilities, performance metrics, and expectations. Productivity becomes a measure of worth. Busyness becomes a badge of honor. Silence feels uncomfortable, even suspicious. When every spare moment is filled with noise, there's no space left to notice the one thing that doesn't make noise at all. Over time, people begin to identify completely with their roles. They are their job, their routine, their social label, their to-do list. Life runs on autopilot. Days blur into each other, and questions like, who am I beyond all this, never quite surface, not because people don't care, but because there's always something more urgent demanding attention. This isn't accidental. Systems are built to reward outward focus. Attention is constantly pulled toward goals, fears, comparisons, and distractions. It's like living under a spell that keeps the spotlight pointed everywhere except inward. Spiritual numbness isn't a moral issue. It's an energetic one. When awareness is constantly fragmented, there's no coherence for resonance to occur. The monad doesn't break through this state with dramatic interventions. It doesn't punish ignorance or reward curiosity. It simply doesn't interrupt it. If the surface of a lake is constantly disturbed, you can't see your reflection, no matter how clear the water underneath might be. Some people go their entire lives without ever questioning who they are beyond their routine, and that's not wrong. It's just one way of experiencing existence. Others feel a quiet discomfort they can't name, a sense that something essential is being missed, even when life looks fine from the outside. That discomfort isn't dissatisfaction in the usual sense. It's more like homesickness without a location attached to it. The people who resonate with the monad often recognize themselves in this feeling. Many of them felt old inside from a very young age, like they were carrying a depth that didn't quite match their years. Small talk feels draining, not because they're antisocial, but because surface-level exchanges rarely touch what feels real to them. Silence, on the other hand, feels alive. It's not empty. It's full of something subtle and reassuring. They tend to notice meaning in moments others dismiss as random. A chance conversation, a pause in the day. A sudden insight while doing something ordinary can feel strangely significant, even if there's no logical explanation for why. Emotionally, they're often sensitive, picking up on atmospheres and unspoken tensions, yet there's a resilience there too. When chaos hits, they might surprise people by how calm they remain, as if some deeper part of them isn't shaken by surface turbulence. Socially, they're frequently misunderstood. They don't always fit neatly into expected molds, and that can lead to a sense of being slightly out of place, even among friends. Solitude becomes important not as an escape, but as a way to recalibrate. Being alone doesn't feel lonely to them, it feels honest. In that quiet space, their intuition speaks more clearly, not as words, but as sudden knowing. Realizations arrive fully formed, without a clear source, like answers appearing before the question was consciously asked. What's interesting is that most of these people weren't searching for awakening. They weren't chasing enlightenment or following a strict spiritual path. Many of them weren't spiritual at all in the conventional sense. Awakening found them in the middle of ordinary life, during a walk, a moment of stillness, a personal crisis, or even a sense of deep peace that came out of nowhere. There was no effort involved, no achievement unlocked, just recognition. That recognition doesn't turn someone into something special or separate. If anything, it strips away illusions of specialness. It reveals a shared ground beneath all experiences, a common awareness that doesn't belong to anyone personally. The monad isn't a badge you earn or an identity you adopt. It's what remains when identities loosen their grip. And once it's noticed, it doesn't dominate life or demand attention. It simply stays, quietly present, like a steady horizon behind everything else that comes and goes. Orange heart. At some point, many people begin to notice changes in themselves that don't fit neatly into psychological labels or life phases. They're subtle at first, easy to dismiss, but once you notice them, they keep showing up. One of the earliest signs is a growing detachment from trends and crowds. Things that once felt exciting or important start to feel strangely hollow. You can still participate if you need to, but there's no real pull anymore. It's not superiority and it's not rebellion. It's more like watching a wave pass without feeling the need to jump into it. You see movements rise and fall, opinions shift overnight, and something in you stays untouched by the urgency of it all. Alongside that detachment, success itself can start to feel empty, even when achieved. You reach goals you once thought would finally make you feel complete, and instead of fulfillment, there's a quiet flatness. Not disappointment exactly, just the clear realization that the achievement didn't touch the place inside you that actually matters. From the outside, life might look impressive or stable, yet inwardly there's a sense that something deeper remains unmoved by wins and losses alike. This can be confusing, especially in a culture that constantly reinforces the idea that success equals happiness. You may also notice that you observe people more than you judge them. Situations that once triggered strong opinions now invite curiosity instead. You start seeing patterns in behavior, pain behind reactions, fear behind aggression. It's not that you excuse harmful actions, but you're less interested in labeling people as good or bad. There's a distance that appears, not coldness but clarity. You watch, you listen, and you understand more than you react. This shift often surprises people around you, who might expect you to take sides or join the emotional momentum of a moment. At the same time, there's often a quiet pull toward truth rather than belief. Big claims and rigid ideologies lose their appeal. You're no longer satisfied with explanations that require you to shut down your own perception. Instead, you're drawn to what feels real, grounded, and directly experienced. This doesn't necessarily make you cynical, it makes you precise. You want to know what holds up in silence, not what sounds convincing in noise. Time itself can begin to feel strange. Days blur together, yet individual moments can stretch and feel incredibly vivid. You might lose track of hours while sitting quietly or walking, only to suddenly feel fully present in a single breath or glance. The usual rhythm of time loosens its grip. This can feel disorienting at first, but there's also a sense of spaciousness in it, as if life isn't constantly rushing you forward anymore. Another sign that often goes unspoken is a sense of grief for something you can't name. It's not tied to a specific loss or event. It's more like mourning a forgotten home or a version of truth that was never fully lived. This grief can surface unexpectedly in quiet moments, music, or even joy. It doesn't overwhelm, but it lingers, asking to be felt rather than fixed. Many people in this state feel deeply exhausted by pretending. Wearing masks, playing roles, adjusting yourself to fit expectations becomes draining in a way it never was before. Even harmless social performance can feel heavy. There's a growing need to be real, even if that means being misunderstood or alone at times. Along with this comes a strange sense of waiting, not for a specific event, person, or breakthrough, but for something unseen. It feels like standing on the edge of recognition, aware that something is unfolding without a clear timeline. None of these experiences are symptoms or problems to be solved. They're signals of alignment. They suggest that something deeper has already been touched, even if the mind hasn't fully caught up yet. As this alignment deepens, loneliness often enters the picture, and it can be one of the most misunderstood aspects of this awakening. Once you've seen certain things, you can't unsee them. Conversations change, priorities shift. What once bonded you to others may no longer resonate in the same way. Old connections don't usually end dramatically. They fade naturally, like paths that slowly diverge. This can be painful, especially when there's still affection and history involved. There can be a lingering feeling of not belonging anywhere, of being slightly out of step with the world around you. You might be surrounded by people and still feel alone, not because you're disconnected, but because your inner reference point has moved. This loneliness isn't punishment and it isn't abandonment. It's a process of decoupling. Layers of identification fall away, and with them, the automatic sense of fitting in. What remains can feel raw and exposed at first. The important reframe is this: the monad doesn't isolate you from people, it isolates you from illusion. What falls away are not real connections, but connections built on roles, expectations, and unexamined agreements. Over time, this kind of loneliness often gives way to a quieter, more authentic form of connection, one that doesn't depend on constant validation or sameness. Within this space, many people wonder what their role is supposed to be now. There's a common assumption that awakening means teaching, preaching, or leading others, but not everyone is meant to be visible in that way. Some roles are silent by nature. Some people become observers, holding awareness without interference. Others act as stabilizers, bringing calm into chaotic environments simply by how they are. Some serve as anchors of awareness, subtly influencing spaces through presence rather than action. These roles don't look impressive from the outside. They don't come with titles or recognition, yet they change reality in quiet ways, through restraint instead of reaction, through clarity instead of control. There's no need to announce awakening or convince anyone of anything. The monad works in silence. Its influence is felt, not declared. A powerful realization often emerges here. You were never meant to save the world, only to stay awake within it. That alone is enough. After the initial touch of the monad, life tends to move through recognizable phases, though they rarely follow a neat order. Confusion often comes first, as old frameworks stop working and new ones haven't fully formed yet. This can feel unsettling, like losing your footing. Detachment follows, not as apathy, but as a loosening of emotional hooks that once controlled your reactions. Grief may rise again, deeper this time, as you mourn identities, dreams, and assumptions that no longer fit. Then, gradually, clarity begins to surface. Not answers to every question, but a clear sense of what matters and what doesn't. Eventually, stillness becomes more frequent, not permanent but accessible, a place you can return to. As this unfolds, life often simplifies on its own. Desires fall away, not because you suppress them, but because they lose relevance. Depth replaces accumulation. You stop chasing validation and rigid identities. You start embodying presence and integrity, not as ideals, but as natural expressions of who you are now. The final realization can be both humbling and freeing. Nothing external needs to change for this to be real. The world can stay exactly as it is. You already changed. And if this feels familiar, if something in you recognizes these words without needing them explained, then there's nothing more you need to do right now. You're not broken. You're not late. You haven't missed your moment. There's nothing to fix or force. There's only stillness, and within it, recognition. The monad doesn't call loudly. It waits until you're quiet enough to hear it. This video is not for everyone, and that's not clickbait. If you're here reading this instead of scrolling past, something already pulled you in. Not curiosity, recognition. The kind that doesn't need proof, only silence. There is an ancient awareness beneath everything. Not a belief, not a religion, not a trend. It doesn't speak loudly and it doesn't chase attention. It waits. And when it reaches certain souls, life begins to feel different. You start questioning things that once felt normal. Success feels empty. Noise feels unbearable. You notice patterns, pauses, and meanings where others see nothing. You feel like you've stepped slightly outside the world, watching instead of participating the way you used to. This video explores what that means. Why the monad only reaches certain souls. Why awakening often feels lonely before it feels clear. Why you didn't seek